Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where first off, I'm excited to announce the winners of those 3 Insurgent Blu-rays from our friends at Dolby Atmos. I got a ton of great entries. You guys got very creative once again, and so the competition was stiff. However, I'm very pleased with the 3 winners. And if you hear your name announced here, check your Twitter account for a direct message from me on how to receive your Blu-ray, again from Dolby Atmos. So thanks again to them for thinking of us here at Beyond the Trailer. All right, so third place goes to BTT viewer Pete Media. And Pete Media won because he tapped into a sentimentality that I feel is very important, not just with this film, but movie-going in general. So Pete Media said, "At Grace Randolph, my 9-year-old niece pushed me to try it, but when I agreed it was too late. Watching it with her would be a treat for us both, hashtag Dolby Atmos." And I thought that was very nice of Pete to want to try and make up for making his niece miss the movie. And that speaks to me personally because when Kung Fu Panda 2 came out, I had a heck of a hard time getting anyone to go and see it with me. And of course, it was amazing, which the person who finally agreed also felt, and they were like, "Oh, I shouldn't have been so reluctant to see this." But, you know, sometimes you don't, I think there's nothing wrong with going to a movie by yourself. It can actually be a lot of fun. But sometimes you want to go with someone else, especially when you want to share the experience. So it's only a movie. It's only like 2 hours of your life. It's not that expensive. I mean, in some cities it is. But still, I think relatively speaking, in comparison to other entertainment events, it's not that expensive. So if someone really is a big fan of something and wants to go with them, have a good time, allow them to enjoy their fandom, even if you don't share it. So that's very nice of you, Pete, and I hope that you and your niece enjoy the movie. So second place goes to BTT viewer Ian Darko, and Ian Darko said, "At Grace Randolph, hashtag Dolby Atmos. One of the best parts of Insurgent is that it better utilized Miles Teller than Fantastic Four. Hashtag best character." I agree that Miles Teller, I think, is perhaps the best character in Insurgent. He does a really good job. And I think that Ian's tweet is interesting because it harkens back to a simpler, more innocent time when many of us wondered when Miles Teller would get his own franchise, and we're excited to see him prove his stuff with a leading role in Fantastic Four. And of course, we all know how that turned out. Well, I enjoyed the movie and I enjoyed the first 2/3. As I've said in my review, the last third is just absolutely awful and almost unwatchable, and you feel sorry for the actors that they have to deliver the lines that they're given. But in the beginning of the first 2/3 of the movie, everybody does a good job, but Miles Teller in particular. So let's hope that people remember Insurgent over Fantastic Four, at least when it comes to producers and casting directors. So congratulations, Ian. Great tweet. And then first place goes to a very creative way to look at the movie. Now, often we talk about log lines, the elevator pitch. And in Hollywood, a log line is when you say a movie is one thing meets another, to kind of give the studio executive that you're pitching to an idea of how this new property might be a success, because it's combining 2 properties other people have such strong affiliation or association with already. So BCT viewer Kylie Coates came up with a great one. So Kylie Coates tweeted me, and she said, "At Grace Randolph, hashtag Dolby Atmos. What happens when you get a cast like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and a story like Jupiter Ascending, Insurgent?" And I thought that was a pretty solid mashup. Not only was it intriguing, but I thought it was pretty accurate as to what was the final result with Insurgent. Very much Fast Times at Ridgemont High meets Jupiter Ascending. All right, so those are the 3 winners. Congratulations to all of you. Check your Twitter accounts for that direct message from me. And thank you everybody else for entering. As I said, the competition, as always, was very stiff. You guys are getting very good at one-sentence reviews. All right, so let's move on to the 3 stories of the day. The first one we're going to discuss has a huge, huge spoiler in it, potentially. It's speculation, but I think it's pretty solid speculation. So if you don't want a Star Wars spoiler, skip to the next story. I'm going to give you a few moments to do that. The way you can do it is if you're a regular viewer, you know this, but if you're not a regular viewer of Morning Movie News, why not? But what you should do is click either on the annotation here at the pictures to the next story about the 50 Shades of Grey spoof, or in the video description I have chapter times each episode so you can skip around there. Alright, so this is your last chance to go into that video description and click onto the next story because I'm going to discuss potential spoilers. Okay, let's go. Now, yesterday evening, when I got back from the Man from U.N.C.L.E., someone tweeted me, Grace, Luke Skywalker pic from Force Awakens has hit the net. So I quickly was looking around to be like, where is it? I must see this for myself. And lo and behold, it's a good thing I was pretty fast and someone tweeted me right away because Disney and Lucasfilm were moving very quickly to take this picture down. Because I do believe it's a pretty significant spoiler for the movie. So what is it? And again, if you haven't jumped ship yet, this is your last chance, literally. Well, it's a picture of Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, obviously, but he's wearing like white Jedi robes, and he has his hood on, and he's in a motion capture studio. Now, considering in the trailers for Star Wars The Force Awakens, we've seen Luke with his metal hand. That's what seems to give away that it's him. I mean, we're not 100% sure, but it's heavily implied that that's Luke Skywalker. He wears a black cape and a simpler, a simpler outfit of someone who's almost like a hermit, on the run or something like that. Not the elaborate robes that he's seen wearing in this photo. And when you think about it, the elaborate robes that he's seen wearing seem very similar to the type of dress the Jedi wear once they've passed on to the other side, and they come back in astral forms, or whatever they call it for the Jedi, to visit the living. So, and that's added to not only by the costume choice, I feel, but by the fact that he's in a motion capture studio. This isn't captured on set, and that this is something they're going to beam into the movie. Now, he could also be a hologram message for someone, a la Princess Leia, of course, in A New Hope, but I think because of the dress, I'm guessing that Luke Skywalker will perish in the film. Perhaps they're shooting an after-credit sequence, maybe, but that means that Luke Skywalker is going to, go the way of Obi-Wan in Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which, again, I feel is a little too self-referential to the other films. You don't want to follow the plot points in the first trilogy, well, not the prequels, but the first trilogy that was released, Episodes 4 through 6, down to the tiniest details for Episodes 7 through 9. But we'll see. I'm shocked that such a picture was able to be leaked. Star Wars, as we all know, has worked very hard to keep such leaks from happening, including like a promotional propaganda campaign within the production, telling people loose lip sync starships because they don't want to give away big plot points for the movie, and this was a doozy. So you can see why Disney and Lucasfilm worked so hard to take it down as quickly as possible. But the damage to some extent has been done. So I'm curious, if you decided to continue to watch this spoiler, what do you think of the potential reveal? Do you think that it does mean that Luke Skywalker is dead, or do you think he's just sending someone a holographic message? All right, and also, what do you think of the idea of killing Luke Skywalker off in the Episode 7, just as we get this trilogy started? There was a bunch of talk from J.J. Abrams about how answering the question as to who is Luke Skywalker was a big part of why he wanted to take on this film, and he's like, he's dead, that's who he is. So we'll see. Now, although, as we all know, just because a Jedi passes on doesn't mean he stops influencing the living, but still, that would be a pretty big decision for the character in the films. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Welcome back if you skipped ahead. Now we're going to talk about a spoof that's currently started filming, and it's going to be released in January 2016, late January 2016, and this is a 50 Shades of Grey spoof called 50 Shades of Black by Marlon Wayans. The Wayans, of course, have a whole little cottage industry going of spoofing popular franchises. They started out with like the scary movies, like the Scary Movie franchise they started. Then they ended up actually leaving it and starting the Haunted House movies. They also did the White Chicks movie. They do a lot of spoofs. And I think the 50 Shades, we'll see how that works in terms of, getting a big audience. There's certainly a big audience, or was a big audience, for 50 Shades. And I find it interesting that this movie will hit theaters in late January 2016, pretty close to when 50 Shades Darker was supposed to hit theaters, but they had to delay that sequel due to contract problems and finding anyone to take over the movie. It's interesting. 50 Shades of Grey was a very similar situation actually to Fantastic Four. Lots of infighting with the film, everybody not getting along, people really, the general public and the media really attacking the movie. However, that movie was not able to be derailed. Huge hit, over 500 million worldwide, although, still a lot of animosity associated with the film, which is crazy considering just how much money it's generated. But that's in a situation where Universal was able to keep that puppy on track and just, ride its ass like Zorro, to quote Jerry Maguire, and just get that thing across the finish line, and it ended up being in a spectacular fashion. But because of all the problems and the infighting, they've had to delay the sequel to 2017. So it'll be interesting to see if 50 Shades of Black actually does the franchise a favor by keeping it in people's minds when it comes out in 2016, or if it further erodes the franchise. I'm very curious to see how the sequel will perform, because the first one was by far and away almost like some kind of like weird Hollywood anomaly. It really captured a moment in the pop culture consciousness, but I don't know if it can be repeated. It just made so much money and was just so popular online. I'm curious to see, considering the hate that was generated towards it, which I feel is unjust. I talked about in Straight Outta Compton that skanks are real, and you have to realize that 50 Shades of Grey is the story of a skank. A gold digger, as I said when I reviewed that movie. And really quite fascinating, and I like the fact that as more and more women get into storytelling, you see different types of women portrayed in stories, in many different mediums, that aren't always like that aren't all like the wonderful mother or wife or girlfriend, etc. And they don't always get punished in the end. Sometimes they do marry the guy and get billions of dollars. Now they just had to do a little S&M. So anyway, that's a choice that Dakota Johnson's character decided to make. She was willing to make it, and she got, some would say, at least a financial reward in doing so. So again, story of a gold digger, as Kanye West says, she ain't interested in no broke. I can't sing along because I'm white. All right, so anyway, I'm curious, are you interested in 50 Shades of Black? Are you excited to make fun of the franchise, or you just want nothing to do with it, even in a comedic nature? All right, so that's the second story of the day, and today we're going to end on another round of our new favorite game, What Should Rebecca Ferguson Do Next with Her Career? We've talked about she should be Captain Marvel, she should be Catwoman. I think she'd make a great Catwoman, as many of you have said. I'm actually watching The White Queen now because I liked her so much in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. But I have to say, the more I see of Rebecca Ferguson, the more I think she would make an awful Captain Marvel. I'm actually more on the Ronda Rousey train now with Captain Marvel. But I think she'd make a wonderful Catwoman. And of course, she just recently was in the news for testing for the role of Belladonna in the new Gambit movie. But her name has actually been mentioned by fans in a new context, and that's the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I actually think might be as good a role for her as Catwoman, or perhaps even better. And I hope that the people in Fox, particularly the producers of this movie, are, paying attention to this idea. And also, I'm very encouraged by the fact she's already testing for Fox with the Gambit role, right? So she's on their radar. Hopefully they'll consider her for a different comic book movie, and that's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Now, as we've already discussed, they're going to bring that franchise back. They're going to try and do something more faithful to the original series. And the reason it's in the news is that the producer was quoted as saying he wanted to make it female-centric, which, had a little bit of a knee-jerk negative reaction from some fans, and I think really underscores the importance. There's a pendulum effect. You have all male-centric movies for decades, and then you have a situation where you go female-centric, and obviously the ideal is when that thing, settles down in the middle, where we have movies that have everybody in it. And I think League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is such a situation. Now, in the first film adaptation, they really had it as a very male-centric film, and their Mina Murray, was really relegated to like a supporting character in the movie, and kind of like the eye candy, the babe of the movie. But in the comic books, she is like one of the leaders of the team. But she's not the main character. I would really say it's her and Alan Quartermain, a male and a female character. I think they're both very important. And so are the other male characters. It's a fantastic comic book. If you have not read The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it gets a little crazy, as does all of Alan Moore's work, the more it goes on. But the first two graphic novels, the first two collections, are really spectacular. And it's hard to get better storytelling than that. When you read it, you'll be like, why isn't this a movie that's done like the comics? I mean, it's perfect. Just leave it alone. And so I'm hoping that is the case with the second version, this reboot. I would hate to see it go in the opposite direction, where it becomes all female-centric. And you're seeing people start to speculate that maybe they'll bring in other female, literary heroines into the story instead. And it's like, no. You're getting ahead of yourself. Just fix the Mina Murray character, and you're fine. You don't need to just, get rid of all the great male characters as well. They have the Invisible Man in there, Captain Nemo, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, fascinating version of that character, and of course Alan Quartermain and Mina Murray. So I think Rebecca Ferguson would be spectacular in that role, Mina, of course, being from the Dracula stories, and I think that would be just wonderful. And it's interesting, the producer, when talking about this, referenced Mad Max and the character of Furiosa and how great it was to to have a strong female character there. And I would caution that producer that the role of Max, played by Tom Hardy, was also very strong, and that I think it's very dangerous, not just to the Mad Max Fury Road movie, but to movie making in general, to categorize Mad Max Fury Road as a female-centric movie, because it's kind of going to create a situation where if you have a strong female character, it therefore just becomes her movie, and it's going to create a situation where you can't have strong female characters without it suddenly becoming a chick flick. And I was very disappointed in the reaction that a lot of, not a lot, but some very vocal fans had to Mad Max Fury Road, saying it really should have been just called Furiosa the movie, which I think is unfair. I think Mad Max was very much a big part of that film, and I think that they shared the screen and the story equally. And so I think that because if you start categorizing Mad Max as a female-centric film, it's only going to hurt strong female characters going down the line. So I would like to see League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with Rebecca Ferguson as Mina Murray, but then I'd love to see a wonderful rest of the male cast as well, and just something that tells a good story and isn't concerned with pushing an agenda when it comes to gender, or ethnicity. That's obviously what we'd all like to see. And, Captain Nemo there, of course, is an Indian character, and I think it would be wonderful. India is a huge market, and it would be great to see that role cast correctly as well. They did in the, to be fair, in the first movie version of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but they really sidelined that character. It's really the Sean Connery show, and I think that's not fair. It's very much an ensemble picture, and it needs to stay ensemble comic, and it needs to be an ensemble movie. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Congratulations again to everybody, to everybody who entered, but particularly to those who won the Blu-rays. And please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.